Hey, what's happening? It's Andrew Grillos. I'm going to tie my Dancin Ricky for you this evening. It's another one of my kind of low riding, Stonefly, sort of general attractor, maybe not quite hopper. I guess it's probably closest to a Stonefly, but it works in a big variety of colors. Sits pretty low in the water like a lot of my flies, so I think the fish get a good look at it. It's been super effective. A buddy of mine just kind of checked in with me and he let me know that it outfished a couple other salmon fly patterns like pretty significantly, so that was kind of cool feedback to get. It's got a great amount of movement in the water. It's pretty much entirely synthetic, so it's going to float really well. It's nearly indestructible. It's a super durable fly, which is also really important to me. Yeah, pretty funny name too, Dancin Ricky. A good friend of mine here in Montana, Rick Matney. Maybe some of you know who he is. You can find him on Instagram. He's got a few different accounts. I think there's Rick Matney Outdoors, AK Chrome Chasers, and Wild Game Chef. He's a really good guy, one of my best buddies. And I guess when he was younger, when he was kind of partying, he used to get a little inebriated. And then he was a fantastic dancer. It just took a few drinks to bring the dancer out of him, which I only found out about that nickname kind of recently. So I thought that nickname lent itself to a really good fly name and kind of a tribute to one of my best buddies. So yeah, that's the story behind the name of the Dancin Ricky. Hope you guys like it. Hope you learned something from this. As with all my videos, I want you to take away tying techniques, not necessarily just step by step how to duplicate something that I created. Try to just retain the techniques and apply them to your own creations. If you like these videos, please subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and that's a good way to keep up with these videos as they come out. I try to do them every 1 to 2 weeks. Hopefully I can keep that up. Thanks a lot, and you guys have a good evening. Alright, so what I've got here is my Dancin Ricky in a size 4 in the salmon fly color combo. I think this evening I'll do a size 6 in the salmon fly color. It's a good color to show you. You can pretty much modify all of the colors of this fly to suit your needs. Whether you want to do a salmon fly, golden, squala, scale it way down and try a yellow Sally, try all sorts of other attractor colors, pink, purple, royal, red, you name it. So let's get after it. I'm going to pop this guy out, put a hook in there, about like that. The hook that I tie this guy on is an Umpqua U106. It's got that bent shank. I think it's maybe like a 1X heavy hook. It's nice and strong, so you can pull on fish pretty hard with it. I'm going to go ahead and start my thread up here close to the eye, but not totally touching it. Lay down a nice tight thread base, as I do with almost all of my flies. This gives our materials a nice solid foundation to grab a hold of. Go ahead and cut that tag end. I'm going to wind this back so my thread's hanging about even with my barb there. Might take like 1, 2, I like where I'm at there. So my first step here is to take a foam strip that I've cut ahead of time. This is 2mm foam. This is a color that's dark gray. You actually can't get this one in hobby stores, right? Somebody always says, oh, why don't you go to Hobby Lobby for that? Because I have pretty much every size, shape, and color of foam that you can get from the hobby stores, and they don't sell this in this dark gray. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is take this thread back up to right before that bend in the middle of the shank, and I'm going to go ahead and tie my foam in up here. By tying this in up here and then burying it like I'm about to do, this builds up a little bit more of a bulky underbody. That way we have to do a little bit less dubbing to create the underbody of this fly. Just want to check where I'm at there. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and just make a few wraps back up here, just kind of secure everything, really crank on that end there. Good. That's okay if it's a little lumpy like that because we're going to dub over it anyway. My next step here is to dub the thorax of the fly. This is rusty brown ice dub. I like this color a lot for a salmon fly. It's not too crazy bright orange like some salmon flies. It's a little bit more muted. So go ahead and build up your dubbing rope here. A little dubbing wax on there always helps. And then we're going to wrap this forward. Get that out of the way there. I tie on a rotary vise. I love this Dynaking Excalibur that I use. It's always nice for that very reason that you just saw. You can kind of pivot the vise out of the way if you need to. I'll show you another thing that I like to do right here. So there's my dubbing rope for starters. Probably going to need to do a little more. But instead of wrapping it around the fly, I'm just going to go ahead and rotate the hook in my vise like so. That allows me to see a little bit more clearly how I'm building up that dubbed underbody. I can kind of control it a little better if I want to make a close wrap to build that up, or if I want to spread it out a little farther to kind of thin it out. Ideally, this dubbed underbody will have a bit of a taper to it, going from thin at the back to a little bit thicker, kind of towards the midsection of the fly. So far, I like the thickness that we've got going there. So just a couple more turns of dubbing ought to do it right there. Looks good. Alright, great. So that dubbing is now built up to that bend in the shank there. Our next step in this fly is to take and pull that dark gray foam forward. I'm going to go ahead and hold it. Make one wrap to just kind of catch it there. I'm not going straight to maximum tension. If you do, you might cut right through your foam. So kind of go a little bit softer. Make a second wrap, a little more tension. And finally a third wrap with quite a bit of tension there. Maybe a fourth. And so now that's nice and secure there. I'm going to go ahead and cut this tag end off because we don't need it for the time being. Get that out of there. I'm going to bury the front end that I just cut there with a few extra wraps. Good enough. Alright, what I'm going to do now is create a series of X wraps along the back of the fly here. You'll see this in a lot of my fly tying. I really like this technique. I think it looks cool and it makes for a little bit more durable fly. And it doesn't sacrifice the buoyancy of the foam by fully compressing it, right? If you totally just buried the foam, it's kind of like a little bubble or a little sponge and you just squeezed all of the air out of it. Whereas these open X wraps that I like to do, they still leave the foam somewhat uncompressed and still buoyant. And one final X wrap there. Great. So now I'm at the back. You can see I've made the segments going towards the back of the fly. Now I'm just going to advance my thread towards the front, kind of do the opposite and complete the X's that I just created. Like that. A couple wraps up here just to kind of secure things. Good. So what you can see there now is the X's, right? That kind of makes that more durable, gives it that cool segmented look. You know, the fish is underneath the fly looking up at it, so they just kind of see the segments like that. Alright, so my next step with this fly is I'm actually going to go ahead and dub the front portion of the fly now. The abdomen. Or sorry, the thorax. I started with the abdomen. Now I'm dubbing the thorax. Getting mixed up. I tied this fly slightly differently a number of times, and then finally figured out if I actually do the dubbing at this step, it makes the fly a lot quicker and easier to tie. Instead of tying everything in at this point and then pulling it out of the way and then trying to sneak the dubbing under it, just go ahead and dub the front now. Right, so now I'm up there pretty close to the eye. Still need a little more to build up that taper, and actually we're going to take the thread back to that midpoint. Put a little dubbing wax just on my finger. Sometimes that really helps to tighten up the little dubbing rope there. Go. Go ahead and wrap that dubbing back. Got away from me there. I'm just going to give it a trim like that. So that's pretty decent there. Yeah, I like that. So now I've gone ahead and I have the abdomen dubbed back here, and I've got the thorax dubbed up there. And now we're back at that bend in the hook shank, where we're going to tie in a number of other things. So the first thing we're going to do here is tie in this kind of mid layer of the fly. It's going to be another chunk of this 2mm dark gray foam. And I like to go ahead and cut this guy to a point, about like that. And I want this point to stick out a little bit beyond the end of the hook. Ideally where I cut the taper there, you can kind of see that corner. That'll line up with the end of the fly's body. So we'll take one wrap over it. Not a ton of tension, just kind of snug it up. Make sure you like where it's positioned. Second, a third wrap, that's a little better there. That's not going to go anywhere. Alright, the next step that we've got here is to tie in a little bit of midge flash. I really like this pearl midge flash. I'm going to go ahead and grab probably 3 or 4 strands out of here and then double it over my thread and tie it in. Let me cut it out of the package here. That looks good. I think I've got 4. Alright, so I've got these 4 strands of midge flash here. I'm going to go ahead and double it over my thread and then flip that up. Drop it right on top there like that. By tying that in the center, it just makes the fly significantly more durable. If you tied it in right by the ends, you'd be able to pull those flash fibers right out of there. Whereas in the middle, they're not going anywhere. I'm going to sweep these guys back and then trim them just a little bit longer than the body of the fly there, or that underwing that I created. Great, so we've got our flash there. Next step here is the actual wing of the fly. This is 1mm transparent black foam. It's a pretty long strip too. I am going to go ahead and kind of size it up right now and then trim it. So I've got it doubled over, right, folded it in half. Kind of eyeball it for length right there. I'll show you about the length that I want to cut it here. Great. That's pretty close. So I've got these 2 ends. I'm going to go ahead and cut them and kind of give them that stonefly wing shape. I'm going to cut the corners off of them so they get this, see how they're kind of rounded there. And what I'm going to do with this now, I'm going to unfold it since I had it folded in the center. Lay it right on top of the fly. Take 1 wrap, make sure the thread's positioned where I want it. 1 wrap and 2 wraps there, right in the center. And now I'm going to go ahead and fold that front one back. Again, that's a durability trick for you. If you were to just tie those in, you could pull them right out, whereas having it tied in the center and folded makes the fly significantly more durable. The next thing I like to add is a little chunk of this McFlylon on top. Go ahead and thin that down just a bit. Great. So this is, I think it's like light dun or gray McFlylon. It's that poly yarn that I tie with a lot. It's the same as the wing and the hippie stomper, a number of other flies that I tie. So I'm going to lay this on top right there, tie it right in the center, maybe 2 wraps, pull it back, make just a couple wraps ahead of it too. I'm going to go ahead and just sweep that out of the way for now. We'll trim that in a moment. Now we have another layer of foam that goes on top, back to this 2mm gray foam. What I like to do with this is cut just a bit of a notch in it. I'll show you there. Actually, I have a little better strip of foam right here. So now I've got a notch cut. So you can see how I cut that notch there. That allows the wing to stand up just a little bit more once I tie this in right in front of it. It's not quite going to compress the wing and just cause it to lay flat. By doing that right there, you can see the wing can stand up a little bit. That little wing gives the fly a little more buoyancy, and it also gives you something to see when you throw the fly out there. As if that's not enough to see, the last little step here is this 1mm orange foam. This is kind of an indicator that I like to put on top just so you can see the fly even more easily. A lot of my flies incorporate something to make them more visible. That's a big thing for me from my guiding days. It was always tough when I had older anglers that just didn't have the best eyesight anymore, and they couldn't see their great big dry fly. So I always tried to include some sort of fluorescent yarn or fluorescent foam so they could see their fly that they threw out there. trying to give them the best opportunity to hook the fish. So we've got a bunch of layers of foam tied in there now. I'm going to go ahead and trim this McFlylon back to about half, a little bit less than half the length of that wing, about like that. Next step is to tie the legs in on either side of the fly. I've gone ahead and knotted this in advance for the video. It's just a simple overhand knot, and then put a little tiny bit of super glue on there so the knot doesn't come untied. And you can flip these around one way or the other and get the orientation that you want. I'll show you here once I tie this one in. I want the leg to kind of be pointed down. I want the little legs to hang down in the water. So see how that one's down here now? Right? I'll flip that over, give you the underside view. So with all these legs, I want to try to position them so the little knee joint lets the lower leg hang straight down. So I like what that one's doing. Let's see, we'll tie one in on this side of the fly here. I want the knee joint to kind of line up around the back of the fly too. About like that. Couple wraps to hold it in there. At this point you can kind of adjust them if you don't like the angle. That looks pretty good. Great, so that's everything tied in there. There's a lot going on in that one tie-in spot for sure. My next step here, I will just throw a tiny bit more dubbing on and advance my thread up to the eye of the hook there. This just kind of camouflages the thread wraps that I'm going to sneak up there. There we go. So now I'm going to pull everything out of the way and take that dubbed thread and just do a little bit more dubbing in here. Right up to there. Good. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this bottom layer of foam and press it down. Make one wrap, not super tight at first. Just position it, make sure everything's looking good. Make a couple more wraps to snug that down. About like that. Straighten it up a bit. That looks great. Now I'm going to go ahead and tie the antennas in off the front of the fly here. So what I'm going to do, this is a single strand of that same barred orange round rubber. I'm going to double it over my thread, drop that guy right on top there. One tight wrap there, a second tight wrap. And go ahead and pull these guys forward. Maybe just sneak a third wrap kind of right at the base of them. It's okay that they're not super straight right now, because the next step is going to kind of force them to lay straight. I'm going to take this layer of foam now and press it right on top of them. And again, hold just a little tension, make sure everything looks pretty good, nice and straight. Second, third wrap, go to more tension there. That looks good, like what I've got going there. I'm going to go ahead and take this 1mm orange foam layer, tie that guy down in the same spot, secure that, one, couple more. Good, nice and secure. Let's go ahead and check one thing. Yep, proportionally, I like what we've got going on there. Alright, so the next step here, now that we've got that orange foam layer tied down, is to tie the front legs in. And just like those back legs, I want these guys to be oriented so they're kind of hanging down into the water. I'm going to do the one on my side of the fly first. So there's one wrap, there's a second wrap, moderate tension, so I can still kind of adjust their location there if I need to. That looks pretty good. Throw a third wrap on there, that's nice and secure. That shouldn't shift too much now. Alright, and we'll tie this leg in on your side of the fly. I'm just going to make sure that it's tied in about the same spot as the other guy. Looks good. So one, two, and that third one's not holding a lot. So now, I don't like how that one's oriented. I'm going to go ahead and just adjust it like I've been saying. That looks a lot better already. There we go. Good, so now all these legs are oriented how I want them. We'll throw an extra wrap there. So now I've got all this stuff up here. Everything's tied into the fly that we need to tie in. I'm just going to pull everything out of the way, and I'm going to go ahead and whip finish the fly now. So get everything out of the way. Sneak a couple, 3 wraps in right behind the eye there. I'm going to grab my whip finisher. And just get everything out of the way. Throw in a nice tight 3 to 4 wrap whip finish. There we go, slide that down, great. That's good there. We'll go ahead and cut our thread because now it's just a matter of trimming everything and putting the other legs on the fly. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to go ahead and trim is this bottom layer of foam there. I'm going to flip it over and kind of take a better look at this. I want to leave a bit of a head shape on there, so that's going to be my cut. You can see what I've got there. Left a little bit of a lip on there. My next step is to cut the next layer of gray foam about the same length, just like that. Next step, cut that orange layer of foam about the same length, if not a tiny bit shorter, just like that. These antennas hanging off the front are way too long, so I'm going to cut them probably just about in half. That looks pretty good to me. I like that length for those. I've got all of these little tag ends of the rubber legs. I'm going to go ahead and cut those. I don't want to cut them so close that they're like right next to the body of the fly. I'm going to leave just a little tiny bit of an extra tag end on there, and that just makes the fly a little bit more durable. If you can see, I left just kind of like the little nub there. I do that on purpose. That gives that leg just a little bit more material to kind of hang on to, right? If you were to just yank on this, it would be just a little bit less likely to come out. The final step for adding legs, right? This is a little knot tire tool for tying legs in, tying a knot in like a little hopper leg or something. I use this tool to poke between the two gray layers of foam, just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my final single strand of rubber. See how I just threaded that right through the body there? And at this point, I like to apply just a little drop of super glue and then slide those right into the body of the fly. So we'll get some super glue here. These little Zap-A-Gap flexi tips that I've got on my super glue here are also one of the handiest things you can get if you tie with super glue. It just lets you have a way more precise little tiny drop to use. I can't recommend getting those things enough. So maybe you can see that little glossy bit of super glue there. I'm just going to slide that right into the fly. Now that middle leg's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and trim it as well. Trim the other one about the same length. A little tiny bit long. One more little snip. That looks good. So this fly is starting to take shape now. What we've got going on here now is these knotted legs are made of 2 strands of round rubber. So I'm going to go ahead and split them with the tip of my scissors. Do that to all of them, and then I kind of like to decide which one I like the angle of better, right? So let me separate these guys apart. Right there, great. So now you can see these two hang at a slightly different angle there. I want the ones that hang more straight down into the water. Personally, I like how that looks. So I'm going to go ahead and snip that front one off. This back leg, I'm going to trim the back one off of there. Let me sneak my scissors in there. Whoop. There we go. Right, so you can see now we've got that little knotted leg and then the single strand hanging down below there. Let me do the same on these 2 legs on my side. About like that. Now these are just a little bit longer than I prefer, so I'm going to go ahead and cut those guys up just a bit shorter all the way around. Take a little off at the top there. Come on, scissors. There we go. Great, that is about it. That's my Dancin Ricky right there. Salmon fly color, size 6 right there. Again, change the colors as you see fit. It lends itself to stoneflies really nicely, whether it's a salmon fly, a golden, a little squala, even a little tiny Sally. Crazy colors, pinks, purples, reds, royal, you name it. This fly gets it done. Yeah, thanks for watching. Again, I really appreciate when you guys tune in and check out these videos. Please hit that button and subscribe. That's the best way to stay up to date when I post these. You can follow me on Instagram as well. I post a lot of my fly tying and fishing activities on there. That's about it. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this and you learned something new.